Tracy, welcome to the show.
Paula, thank you. Thank you for that warm introduction, and it's an honor to be with you today.
Well, it's an honor to have you here. Let's talk about your book, Breaking Barriers. You said "Ask for the taking." What about him? Uh, what's going on with guys? Is this solely applicable to ladies, women, or can men also learn from your book?
It's a great question. For certain, I like to think that a lot of the lessons that are featured throughout the book apply to everyone. Anyone that has big ambitions and big dreams. My intent is to encourage those people to really think about their potential. I really believe that I've studied human behavior for decades, and especially leading sales organizations. And people really can do anything they want to do. And my goal is to encourage them to have big dreams. So, Hers for the Taking does talk to some of the specific issues that women have, because certainly imposter syndrome and work-life balance, there's all kinds of things that get in the way that are a bit unique to women, but the tactics and practical advice on how you can break away from the pack and how you can achieve those big goals that you set for yourself, those are universal.
Okay, so thank you for including guys in this book because I'm gonna get your book because I really want to break that barrier. So tell us, Tracy, what inspired you to write House for the Taking?
Gosh, I've been doing coaching, at entry level levels, people that are early in their career, and then executive coaching for many years. And I've found that the same issues that people were struggling with 20 years ago are still very much real. And so I finally decided that I was going to write a book to scale more effectively and efficiently than one-on-one coaching, which is what I've been doing a lot of over time. So, issues around, first and foremost, I think life can be a bit chaotic for almost everyone. Everyone's got challenges, at home, personally, or professionally. And when you're in the moment, especially earlier in your career, it can be easy to be overwhelmed and to get stuck in that moment. And what I really hope to do is to touch the reader, to get them to think, I call it playing the long game, and stop thinking small. Playing small doesn't help you or anyone else. And take time to really think through, where do you want to be in 10 or 15 years? I was probably in my mid 30s when someone asked me, would you ever consider, running sales for our company? It was a Fortune 500. And I'm thinking, who am I to do that? Who
Uh-huh.
am I? And I had two little kids at home. I had lots of reasons to say absolutely not. You're talking to the wrong person. And yet this very senior person was asking me, would I do that? And their advice, they went on to say, because I finally did hesitate and kind of stammered out a yes, maybe. And, and she went on to say, well, then get the experience over the next 10 or 15 years so that you have that option.
Okay.
And that's a big part of why I wrote the book. I really want to instill in everyone that you are capable of so much more than you think you are. And I really want to encourage people to just let themselves dream a bit.
Okay, you are in the right place. We are here to encourage, to motivate, and let people know that they can do it. Now, when you were talking, you talked about people getting stuck. And for me, I always encourage people to get mentors, to look for role models that can help them. So I'll ask you, what role has mentorship played in your career, and how can professionals find great mentors?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something that I'm very passionate about. I think what I would add before, speaking to mentors, is recognizing that you're stuck is a huge first step.
Mhm.
So, I call it, actually, it's not my term. It's a gentleman named Bob Buford wrote a book 30 years ago called Halftime, and he refers to it as smoldering discontent. And when I had smoldering discontent, I was frustrated. Maybe I was bored. I didn't believe in the mission, or perhaps I wasn't learning. Lots of different reasons to be dissatisfied. That's when I started to recognize that was time for me to make a change. And so when you feel that you're stuck, that's actually a good thing that you're recognizing, okay, there's something inside of you saying, I can do more, which is great. And mentors, to your point, can play a huge. It can really help you to step up your career and recognize what do you need to do to grow and learn and get into that next role and the role after that. So I think the key to mentorship is finding someone who's one or two levels above you. It's probably not someone, 5 levels above you. They may give you some bad advice. They don't know what it's like to get to the role that you aspire to. They've maybe forgotten a little bit. So one or two levels above you, and then it doesn't have to be hard. It should be pretty natural. It takes a little bit of courage, of course, but to reach out to someone that you really respect and just say that, hey, I respect you. Would you spend 20 minutes with me? I'd love to get some career advice from you. It's as simple as that. And then do make sure you prepare for a meeting. Make sure that you have an agenda. Make sure you're clear on this is what I want to get out of this meeting, so that you don't, you're respectful of the person's time that you're spending time with. But mentors are really important. If you don't have one, you need to get one, and you may need a couple over the course of your career.
So when you said make sure you have an agenda, I laughed because early in my career, I reached out to connect with a mentor, and he said, "Oh yeah, by all means, come to my office." I got into his office. I was not prepared, so I learned that lesson from there, and from then on, I always have at least a few questions, a few tips or guides that will help me whenever I'm meeting with my mentor. And I do meet with I have more than one. I meet with them regularly to talk about career. So for you, you transition from sales leadership to board position. How did that go? What were the maybe qualities that you can recommend that people should get as they look to grow further in their career?
Um, yes, for sure. I always believed and managed my career, thinking at least, I had this long-term goal, but I was always thinking one or two jobs out, within the next, 12, 24 months. And so Boardwalk was very similar. When I got to the point where I was an officer in public companies, I started thinking, what's next? And I, um, I, I really decided that I wanted to do board work because board work is all about helping CEOs and management teams to reach their full potential. That's why I do board work. I really look for CEOs that want engagement from their boards, which means I specialize in smaller companies that are 150, 200 million up to, $1 billion. And so, how do you do board work is a question I get all the time.
Right.
As you think about your career, you probably need to have a C in your title. So chief financial officer, chief revenue officer, chief customer officer, chief product officer, and of course there's the ultimate chief, which is the CEO.
Yeah.
But board CEOs that are looking to add to their board, they're looking to fill out a diverse group of people. So they always will have a sitting CFO on the board, and that person's responsible for auditing the financials. A lot of times they'll have a sitting CEO on the board, just somebody that they can get advice, they can compare notes with, and that can be a different form of mentorship. And then often I'll get asked to join a board if they really want someone who specializes in revenue growth, because that's my background. And so, I encourage everyone to think, part of the thinking big strategy is if you want to do board work, you need to have that experience that a CEO of a company is going to say, I need you to come help me run and manage and govern the company. And that's really what the board is all about.
Okay, so that's a lot. You said you talked about experience, and I'm also thinking about positioning. And I want to ask, how can professionals like myself position ourselves for but position, so to say?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you're asking that because most people don't ask that question, and it's really important. So I always say you really want to flip the situation around and pretend like you were the CEO of the company that you aspire to join the board of. And think through, what do you bring to that CEO in the way of experience that will better position, him or her to do their job, but also the company to be more successful. So, as you think about the role that you're in, you really want to have, your 2 to 3 minute, elevator pitch, if you would, of why Tracey, what will Tracey bring to the board? So for me, I specialize in companies that that uh, in I specialize in companies that are focused on hyper growth.
Mhm.
So my experience ranged from running, billion-dollar organizations to joining a company that was public at 100 million, and we went from 100 to 700 million in 5 years. So if you're a CEO that's worth 200 million, they want some help on go to market, and then that's where I would join. So, you know, change chairs and pretend like you were the CEO, and then think through, what would he or she get if you join the board? What are the experiences and the skills that you bring that are unique?
Right.
And that's how you'll get your first board seat.
Okay, thank you. I want to make sure that I am doing my job here. As for the taking, and by asking you this question, in your opinion, what is the biggest barrier preventing women from reaching this C-suite? I do not know the exact figure today, but I think less than 5 or 10% of women are represented in the as CEO of Fortune 500 company. I think it's less than five. Maybe it's more than that now. I'm not sure. But what are those barriers preventing women from getting to that top position?
Yeah. So you're spot on in terms. I think it's just under 10% for public companies that have women CEOs. The named executive officers, so the top five highest paid people in a company for the Russell 3000, which is the top 3,000 companies in the US,
Hmm.
it's less than 16% are women. So 84 are not women. So we have a lot of work to do, which represents a big opportunity for any women that are listening to the podcast. And there's all kinds of issues that hold women back. To some never, because they don't see any women in the executive roles, they therefore don't think they can do it. Uh, there's family issues. There's lots of articles written about how women have two jobs. They have their job at the office and they come home and they have their second job, which is taking care of the family, and caring for others. There's all kinds of social biases and unconscious bias issues that keep women from shying away. Am I too tough, or am I not tough enough? There's this very fine line. One woman just said to me recently, I was told I have to be highly respected and very well liked to lead as a woman. And I thought, gosh, it's not that I want to be disliked, but I don't think your job is to be liked. If you're running a company, your job is to be really good and, of course, respectful and fair and all of those things. But there's a lot of issues that women struggle with, and I hope to put a lot of those myths away, because there are myth busters throughout the book. If I can run a company, anyone could run a company. I don't have an MBA. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I never knew anyone who had run an organization. But I was lucky with good mentors that said, have you thought about this? You could do more. And that's my goal in the book, is to tap people on the shoulder and say, you can do more too.
So, what advice do you want to give women aiming for those executive positions, especially in male-dominated industries?
I think, my biggest piece of advice was to spend time on really what you want for men and women. What do you really want to do? And then to allow yourself permission to dream about why not you? Why couldn't you? If you're an engineer, why can't you be the chief product officer? If you like finance, why can't you be the chief financial officer? Most of the CFOs I've worked with didn't grow up in finance. You know, they were computer science or they were engineering, but they really liked that role. So, you know, the biggest everything starts with believing that the art of the possible. Henry Ford said, "If you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." And then as for all of the challenges that I outlined, and I speak in detail on all those things in the book, those are all areas you can work around. Um, Many others, I'm lucky to have dozens of women friends that are running companies, and we've all worked through all of the chaos that I mentioned before. So I just encourage people to go for it.
So I want to hear part of your experience in terms of your leadership. Can you share an example of a tough leadership challenge that you faced, and how did you solve the situation?
Yeah, sure. I was leading sales for the public sector, so selling to government
Uh,
at a time where California had one of the worst deficits on the planet. The governor was impeached, and there was all kinds of restrictions on government spending. Anything over, I think it was $50,000, had to go to the CIO of the
uh,
state for sign off. So I had this $300 million objective that I was responsible for, and how in the world would we solve for that? And so it was a macro challenge that my team faced. But there was a second challenge I think we learned through mistakes. I certainly have learned through my mistakes, and um, I got very clear on strategy and how we were going to go about doing our jobs. But I also turned into a bit of a micromanager, and I was leading probably 100 people. And, we finished the year and we took a lot of market share, but I looked behind me and I thought, gosh, I don't know if anyone's following because they want to follow.
yeah.
I think they're following because I've been way too overbearing. And it was a huge learning for me that the best leaders don't lead through micromanagement. The best leaders are brilliant at influencing others and winning hearts and minds, and that people do things for their reasons, not for mine or anyone else's. And so it changed my leadership style forever. I really moved into more of a servant leadership style of I'm here to help the people closest to the client or customer to be successful. And I'd recommend that to anyone. People do things for their reasons and they know you're the boss, but if you can make them part of the strategy, you can accomplish anything. And it's way more fun.
Oh, that's so good, Tracy. You said leaders, good leaders, they lead by influence, and people want to just follow them, and they let people feel that sense of belonging. That's what I'm hearing from you. That's fantastic. Now, your book, Hearts for the Taking. What do you hope readers will take away from that book?
I really hope that once the reader decides, hey, maybe I could do this big giant goal, that they will take a lot of the lessons learned that not just I've learned, but there's I feature over a dozen other women that have made it to the C-suite in the boardroom, and they all give advice to their younger self. So my hope is that the book really accelerates the reader's journey as they reach for the stars. And I would say the last third of the book, I call moving from success to significance, because I do think your career is very important. Of course, we spend a lot of time on that in our life. But I also, hope to encourage the reader to think a bit broader about what do they want their legacy to be. And, you know, spending time earlier on in life on what are your most important priorities and making sure you care for those too, not just your career. So, sure, for me, getting to the boardroom, I talk about that was important from a legacy standpoint. But what about your community, your family, your faith, your philanthropy? Could be travel, whatever your 3 to 5 things are. how do you make room for each of those, much like you're doing on this podcast? Like that's a huge give back. And so I hope to encourage the reader to get that kind of balance in their life while they're fighting the good fight in the corporate world.
That's so good. As we are wrapping, I do believe that the success we achieve in life, there is a big contributory factor in terms of the habits that we build, right? So I want to hear from you, what's one habit that has
Mm.
contributed to the most to your career success that you want to share with us?
You know, I, you know, family and life balance, I think, was really important to me. And I think that is a huge challenge for many people. And so, uh, again, I was probably in my mid 30s when I took a class. It was from Stephen Covey's Seven Habits.
Uh,
And I'll never forget what the trainer did. He had this huge fishbowl and he had these big rocks, and the bowl had about a third of sand on the bottom, and he had these big rocks, and the
uh,
rocks said things like health,
mhm,
and it said, career, and it said family, and it said, the gym or whatever, that, just all these priorities.
mhm,
And one by one, we each got to pick a rock to go in the bowl, and pretty soon the bowl was full.
mhm,
And there were still really important rocks that couldn't fit in the bowl. And the question was, well, gosh, how do we get the right balance? That doesn't work for me. And he takes everything out of the bowl, including the sand, and he starts putting all these big important rocks back in, and suddenly they fit. And he takes the sand and he pours it and shimmies the bowl around, and the sand fits too. And the what the class was teaching is the sand is the noise in life. It's email, it's Slacks, it's text, it's Instagram, it's LinkedIn, it's all of the things that we need to do. We have lots of tasks, but if we do some of those tomorrow, it's
mhm.
probably okay. And so put what's important to you on the calendar, not just the meetings at work, but if it's a school play, if it's going to church, whatever is important to you, fit those priorities into your life, and don't hope that they'll happen, make them happen. So that would be my lesson learned.
Okay, that's excellent. That's prioritization, putting first in first. So thank you for sharing that. Now we have come to our rapid fire question section.
Oh no.
Ready for this, Tracy?
I guess so. We'll try.
Okay, one word that describe your leadership style.
Mm. Serving.
Seven. I love that. A book that changed your perspective on business or leadership.
A Lean In, 10 years ago by Sheryl Sandberg.
Oh, Lenin. Okay, that's good. The best piece of career advice you've ever received.
Mm. To play the long game. Think about life 10 to 15 years from now. What the point you're in is just a point in time. Things will be different in 5 years, so play the long game.
Long game. I like that. What's the biggest myth about the C-suite?
That anyone can get there.
Uh,
It's about drive and experience. It's not like a driver's test. There's no test to get there. You've just got to have the courage, the drive, and get the experience.
So, what's one leader that you admire and why?
Oh gosh, that would be a mentor that I worked for. His name was Doug Dennerline, or is Doug Dennerline, but he really taught me more in a couple of years that I worked for him than I would have learned in 10. So back to your point on mentors, they're critical.
Okay, one skill every professional should master.
Communication skills. So
Communication. Okay.
communicate. It- Women and men assume people know what you're doing. Just put your head down, work really hard. You have to communicate what you're working to achieve, and get people surrounding you to help you do it.
Okay, finally, one thing you wish you knew at the start of your career.
That there's no limits to human potential.
Oh,
It, it's
fantastic.
real. It's we create a lot of stories that aren't real in our mind, but the truth is there are no limits to what you're capable of achieving.
Okay, so finally, where can we get your book?
Oh, thank you for asking. Yeah, it's on Amazon. You can pre-order it now. It comes out on March 25th. And It'll be at Barnes and Noble, so it's available on multiple retail channels. But the easiest one is on Amazon. You can also go to my website, which is tracy-newell.com, and it's easy to learn more about the book from there.
So I'm gonna ask like a bonus question since we still have some time. You coach people to help them with their career growth. How does that work?
Well, companies usually will hire me, and
Oh,
then they'll commit to a certain amount of hours per month,
okay.
so that we can dig deep into what the individual is trying to achieve. So that's normally how it works.
Okay. Now I'm gonna pass it to you. Is there anything else that you want to tell my listeners? Maybe about career, maybe about life, or anything at all? The floor is yours.
Ah, I love that. So I think we've touched on most of the big topics, but um, I guess I would just say to my story about the big rocks, as you're climbing the ladder, it's really, I think, important to make time for all of your priorities, and then to ensure that you are comfortable with your choices. Women especially have a lot of guilt. I should be doing this at home. I should be doing this at work. Let go of the guilt and just be comfortable with your choices and know that you're doing the best that you can. Our loved ones just want us to be happy. And so, really, I would say be happy with your choices and enjoy the journey.
Okay, thank you very much, Tracy. I enjoyed this episode, and I'm sure it's guaranteed that my listeners they are going to find it very beneficial. We are grateful for having you on this show today. Thank you very much for your time.
Oh, well, thank you, Bola, and thank you for all you're doing to lift people up. I think it's so important.
Thanks.